Awaiman in Awa clan, on our local government area of Akwa Ibom State. Famous for producing persons who have not only given the state and the country a strong voice in their professions, but have also made the country proud by their commanding achievements and contributions to the advancement of humanity. With such a towering height and brisk strides, they have easily imprinted a generous legacy for the succeeding generations. One of such men was Elder Emmanuel Nkanan, who passed away on the 1st of December 2019. This is the story of the man who distinguished himself as an icon and a doyen, even when viewed from different perspectives. Late Elder Gabriel Emmanuel Nkanang's earthly sojourn began on the 27th of May 1929 when he was born into the royal Nongasian family.
The mother's name was Jane. The mother was Jane and the father was Gabriel Emmanuel Nkanang.
As a child, the late patriarch was enrolled in the Kwaibu Church Primary School, Awaiman, where he obtained his Standard 6 certificate in the 40s. He stood out as a bright pupil with a bright future.
At that time, once you finish Standard 6, was a norm then, you become an auxiliary teacher. There is no man today who passed through that stage who did not teach. If you did not teach, it means you didn't pass through that stage in life. Because by then, missions, there were mission schools everywhere. Missionaries were everywhere. They were establishing schools and hospitals. If you are a woman, they put you through what they call auxiliary nursing for you to become a nurse. Those were the matrons in those days. But the brilliant ones, like my father, who went through those missionary schools, as soon as you finish that Standard 6, they give you auxiliary teaching. So it's from that teaching you earn money and save money to further your education. But when my father now finished and started his auxiliary teaching, and immediately had admission into Ibadan College. The father, he was to resume January. By then, school session used to start in January. His father died December 2nd. So when the father died, of course, at that time, you know, people now with the young mother, with few young boys, that my grandfather left with my grandmother at that time. So, of course, the rest, you can tell how Africans were. The rest thing was that my father, being the first son, very first of the family, that he shouldn't go far. Why do you want to go to Ibadan when your father had died? So that was how my father continued teaching, and he started developing himself. My father told me at that time, the first professional exams he wrote was Royal Society of Arts, RSA.
He taught at his alma mater, Kwaibu Church Primary School, Awaiman, for a while, where he began what would later become an illuminating and illustrious career. Not satisfied with his considerable status as an auxiliary teacher, and undaunted by the loss of his father early in life, the late patriarch decided to push further by gunning for a professional certificate. Hence, he headed for Teachers Training College, Eddy.
They used to call it higher elementary. I think that was 1968. Then from there, my dad proceeded to do his teacher's grade 2. As at that time, teacher's grade 2 was like the zenith, like the epitome of the qualification that was laid out for teachers in the then Southeastern states. My dad thereafter taught at Ikorosop. Today, Ikorosop happens to be in Ikorobasi. My dad taught at Ikorosop. My dad taught at Okanafun. In Okanafun, he taught at Ikorokai, taught at Odoriko. That's where we all had our primary schools. That's at least the first 2 or 3. My senior sister, myself, my immediate junior. Where my dad taught at Ikorokai, taught at Odoriko, all in Okanafun, taught at Ironwaneke, taught at Ikoro Toiwo, taught at Ikoro Kure, all in Okanafun, taught at Ikoro Britam. In fact, that's where we were born. My dad taught at government school, Ikoro Barangbe. He taught at demonstration school, Ndoreyo. He taught at the government school, Ikoro Sekong, in Eket. But actually, he retired from my hometown. He was a very good mathematics teacher. My dad taught me in my primary 5. He taught me in my primary 6.
I'm good in mathematics today because my father was my maths teacher. And there are so many things I knew in primary 3 and 4 that if I tell some people that have graduated now, they may never know it. It teaches you math to the point of giving you short form. To multiply a number by 20, to multiply a number by 25, add 2 0 and divide by 4. All those things, I crammed them right from small. And when people say math is difficult, I laugh because you simply need to have a teacher that has the key. And once you open it, math is one of the simplest subjects I know.
The basic education you have at that early stage, when you're still in your teens, is the home and parental education. And I think he did well, trying to put us through a very strong parental. And today, I'm a strong family man because I was born to see my father and my mother, very strong family people.
We were taught so many things. And I can remember my early days. I used to do Sunday school challenge and all those stuff, and I'll be taking first.
For the late patriarch, although charity begins at home, it should not end there.
Some parents were not so much given to sending their children to school. My dad would go from house to campaign to educate the parents on the need to bring their children to school. It was not like now that we're having all forms of government support. But I think it was still good, but it needed so much work to be done at that rudimentary level for people to embrace education and appreciate what it takes to come to school and be educated.
I'm fun kilong in the sense that adikene nam non toyen, may 10 toyen, any who don't get this and they talk from me. I don't know about okay. Now I'm a come the tomo. Hang at them and defend the door.
He was my teacher, primary school. He shaped a generation of young men and women from my community of our clan in present-day Una local government. It shaped our intellectual and moral foundations and bona fides.
Being a teacher worthy of that name required a disciplined disposition. For Elder Nkanang, such a disposition was a way of life. Hence, he never spared the rod.
Let me give you an example. I don't know your experience, but if you have the kind of experience I had, because there was a time in our own life, in our sphere of life, that we're sandwiched by teacher on both sides. I don't know whether you have that kind of experience, where your mother is a teacher, your father is a teacher. The only thing in between two of you is discipline.
In our house, till we grew up, An immediate junior does not tell the immediate senior, shut up. It was an aberration. So, you don't insult. In my family, you don't swear. In fact, you can't have any vulgar language from our mouth. My father will beat hell out of you. In fact, we don't even try it. We know who we had. What other children say with ease. To God, this, we don't say it in my house. So, and that is the way we were brought up.
My dad will be opening his ears to hear whether there's a stubborn child around our community. Where he finds one or where he hears about one, he will now order the parents to send the child to come and live with us. At a point in our house, we were having more than 8 children who were not part of us, who were not, from my mom or from my dad. My dad would bring them to come and stay with us. My mom will cook for everybody. So they could not afford, so it was a correctional center.
The children they say were stubborn. Once they enter our house, they change. They were not stubborn. I don't know whether it is his gifts or that is what God called him to come and do. And most of those children are great men and women around us today. All of them are around, and we still look at them as part of the family.
When I was in class 1, I was going back to the dormitory, and my father called me. The vehicle was outside to pick me back to school, and he called me in. I was just thinking maybe he wants to give me something or anything at all, or maybe say something that when you go to school, you do this, you do that. But I didn't know that he wanted to beat me at maths. He called me. He said, you're going back to the dormitory. I see something in this house. Each time they play music, I see you doing your legs like this and like this. You see that school you're going to? If I hear that you've gone out, you've broken bounds to go for this school, I will finish you. And as he was saying that, he held my 2 cheeks and was raising, he was a tall man. He raised my 2 cheeks and was shaking me and then dropped me. They said they should now take me to school.
Another discipline I remember him vividly was when I finished my school set. So, then school set was a little bit more strenuous. So I was tired. So I didn't go to Sunday school. So I was lying down after church, after church service. It was the first weekend after my wife. My father came and saw me sleeping. I didn't go to Sunday school. Then Sunday school used to be between 3 to 5 p.m. Oh, he just woke me up and said, come on. Is it because you finished school set, you're too big now to go to Sunday school? And he didn't find that funny. That he just thought, simply because now I believe I finished school. That's the word they used at that time. So because of that, I was a big man. I couldn't go to Sunday school until I now explained to him of the sleepless night I had because of my WAEC. That's what he said, but that's not enough of an excuse. The school is only 2 hours. That if you had worked that hard to write your WAEC, that 2 hours wouldn't add anything to you. It was a disciplinarian.
If the late nonagenarian was illuminating as a teacher, then he simply dazzled as a servant in the Lord's vineyard, where he served with utmost dedication and extreme enthusiasm.
My dad was ordained an elder in Koibo Church in 1970 by the late Pastor Umobong. By then, the Koibo Church, a white man, was under Mbioto superintendency. Now, we grew up to know my dad as the secretary of the local church committee. He also, from then, became the chairman at various times. I'm talking about now. At various times, he was the secretary of his local church committee. He then moved on to be the chairman of local church committee. My dad now grew to be the secretary of the Aba area conference of Koibo Church. I remember very well too, during those days when, by then I was at the Itinerant Institute. That was my secondary school. When once you come back on holidays, my dad would be preparing his blankets, his boxes to go for the church conference at Obo Hill in Aba. He would ride his motorcycle from the village to Aba. That's where they were holding the conference. It was an annual thing. My dad was the secretary of the area conference.
And you can see today that among his children, outside our governor. We have one that is a bishop of the church. She could not have gained that from outside. It came from home. The upbringing, the teachings from the Bible. And so they go a step further to practice what their father taught them. And every other person can say the same thing coming from that area. And even in the schools that he taught, that this was a strict disciplinarian.
My father-in-law was a practical Christian, was a great teacher, was a loving father, very organized man, was a man that loved good things, and was a man of God.
My father made me to understand that there's no Christmas without Christmas service. And since I was born, till today, 50-something years, it means I've done 50-something Christmas services because I've never missed one. To my father, you don't do Christmas without a Christmas service.
He was the first man I saw who every Christmas would come to church and give a gift to the church. And he will always say, I do this on behalf of myself and my entire family, my children and my wife. We will always know that every Christmas he will do it.
My father was one of the early missionaries that took Christianity into Igala, Idoma, in Nasarawa, the middle belt part of Nigeria. They were the ones that took Koibo Church to that area. And some time ago, permit me not to mention names, I saw one of the very topmost, highest echelon in judiciary who made me, he said that when I told him where I come from, he said, I used to know one man who was a teacher and who also brought us gospel, that even the church in his village was established by him. And through him, he got scholarship to go to school. And I said, what was his name? He said, one Eldankana. I said, that's my biological father. But my full name is Udom Gabriel Emmanuel Nkana. But that Emmanuel sweet me past Nkana because of the meaning, God with Udom. So I decided to stop there so that I could tap of the anointing of the name. But that's my biological father. So the guy just, the man drew closer to me. He said, do you know, if not for your father, I would have gone to school. That the church in my village was established by your father. They brought the church, and that church gave scholarship. And he was a beneficiary of that scholarship. Up to Nasarawa State. Even when my father died, his own, in fact, as of November 17, his own concentration mainly were about those churches, those mission fields he established. And he kept telling us, if he dies, we should look after them. And as of today, the stipends he was paying to those pastors, all of us, the entire family, were doing a whole lot still in that ramification to make sure those mission fields, though some of them have grown now to full superintendency and so on, but in our own private life, our private earnings, we still try to make sure we support those mission fields.
With a profound professional acumen and deep spiritual insight, it was only natural for Pa Nkanang to raise his family in a wholesome way. Most often, his words were prophetic. For example, he gave Governor Udom Emmanuel a boyhood pet name of Secretary, and the boy grew to become the secretary to the state government, from where he became the governor.
Secretary came out of the fact of when I was born. And I was born in a very blessed circumstance. And the very one of his friends at that time, late Edugo Basiudom, which I'm named after, who was from Okanofon, actually was the Secretary of Council at that time. So immediately I was born, the man now insisted that no, this one that is born right in front of me is my namesake. So, and my father used to call him Secretary. So automatically that also became my pet name. So that's how that name Secretary came by.
Before we came on board as, my husband came on board as a governor, he was always saying something, that one day you will rule the world and I'll be the queen. And before he died, that day he started calling me Queen. So it came to pass, this prophecy came to pass, that his son, my husband, became the governor of Akwa Ibom State, ruling the state.
All his children, that he's always been saying that wherever we go to, that we'll always be leading. And he pointed out, he said, can't you guys even see where you guys are working? You people are always maybe leading one department or one group or one thing or the other. That is the covenant he's had with his God.
A particularly impressive attribute of the late Elder Ekpenyong was his meticulousness. Somebody once got flogged for tampering with his motorcycle in his absence.
I went to where my dad kept the key. My mom had gone out, so I unlocked the neck of the motorbike. I rode it out. By then, I used to start it with the hand. I'll touch it. The thing gave sound, boom, 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 boom. So I climbed on it and I rode out. I rode up to about the 2 villages. I came back. I packed it. I washed it. I packed it. So when my dad came back, he now brought his diary and looked at the speedometer on the diary and compared it with the speedometer on the machine. He said, no way. He said, what's happened? So he called him. Of course, there was nobody to be looked at except me. My junior brothers were so small. So, that was not the only thing. My dad was very meticulous. He warned us then that we should not be tuning his radio stations outside where he kept it. So wherever he keeps his radio stations, he would leave it there. He comes back. By then he was using Philips radio. I remember very well. So if you tune it and the thing has left that place, he will now know who touched the radio. Then we had gramophone. That's his master's voice. We had it. The big plate, you will now use your hand to turn it and the thing will play. He will know the record he played last and how he arranged it. So in case you have gone there in his absence to play, you can only play when it's around so that you will not spoil. All I'm trying to say here is that my dad was so organized. I think that's a word. Let me use that word. My dad was extremely organized. Organized up to his bedroom. Even when we had no electricity in our house, my dad would go in there, pick church records, pick school records, even without using torchlight. Let me also say this. For so many years, he was the treasurer of the church. There was this rain boots that they were wearing them to the farm. That was my father's sub-treasury. He used to keep almost all the monies of the church. The whole churches would do their functions and everything. My dad was a custodian, and not even a single penny got lost throughout his regime, his years as the secretary, treasurer, even the chairman of committee.
My father was very, very together. He was very well organized. He was a structured person. He would tell you what he had in mind from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. He could run his itinerary every morning, and as far back as then, I learned to draw a what things to do list. From my father. He's the first one that I heard that you should plan your day. So that's actually affected my life, has helped me to be who I am today.
Today, we are celebrating a life of purpose. We are celebrating a life of a great organizer, disciplinarian, as my wife will always say of her father. I will miss him greatly. May his soul rest in perfect peace. Adieu, Daddy.
Teaching and evangelizing apart, which took most of his time, Pa Ekpenyong also had other areas of interest which benefited his family and others.
He was a good farmer. I have never, not until later years after we have grown, that I see my parents buy things. Or maybe we now did not allow them to work as much as they used to work. But we farm in our house. All of us go to farm. We plant. And we farm from morning till night. We farm weekends, we farm holidays. In my father's house, we have all the fruits. Like our native yam, we eat it until the new one comes to meet the old one in the band. Not to talk of cocoyam, those we do not even, now cocoyam is valuable, we did not value it then. And every other thing, was a very good farmer. And then my daddy also had pleasure in architectural work.
My father was one of the very first to build a proper house in our area in those days. And was one of the very first. The house, his own house you see in the village, the first foundation was laid, if I'm not mistaken, in 1956. And I'm not sure my father even thought of marrying at that time. You can imagine somebody who laid a proper abode at that time, a house. That is house today. If you try to dig that foundation, you can't break it.
It was like a tourist attraction. People come and now ask my dad, how many blocks did you use here? We were very small, but I remember very well. They were asking, please tell us how many blocks did you use in this line? So my dad was an architect. He was not trained as one. But my dad would now start educating them. If you want to use foundation, do foundation, start from here.
And so, in consonance with the truism that no matter how great a man is, there comes a time for him to go. For the great teacher and patriarch, the time for him to go was on the 1st of December 2019, when he went to be with the Lord.
He was very active, everything normal the evening before. Not just a date of 1st December, on a Sunday morning. What a glorious time to sleep and go to church without coming back. So he slept off on a Sunday morning, peacefully, and he went to church, but church beyond, and he didn't come back. And I remember very well when we met on November 17. That was the last time we had a very long conversation. My father specifically told me that he has served God in this life and that God will honor him unto his death. And I saw that clear and plain. He died without headache, without fever.
Besides raising his children properly and equipping them with all it takes to succeed in life, Pa Nkanang planted a seed of unity among them.
For the past 24 years, we have been having family meetings every third Sunday of the month. Anywhere you are in the world.
Beneath his glorious life of fulfillment, contentment, and achievement lies a lesson to be learned by all.
Raise your children right. It's very important. Raise your children right and they will represent you.
On his tombstone, I will say the departure of an inspiration. I will sum him in that just word. It was an inspiration to me greatly in all ramifications.